There's a moment that comes to almost everyone, usually quietly, usually late at night. You're doing fine on paper. The job is stable. The people around you seem satisfied with who you've become. And yet something in you feels slightly off, like wearing shoes that fit but were never really yours. Carl Jung spent decades sitting across from people in exactly this condition. Not broken, not in crisis, just tired, in a way that no vacation could fix. He noticed a pattern. The people who suffered most weren't the ones who had failed. They were the ones who had succeeded at a life they never actually chose. Try this for a moment. Think back over today. How many of your choices came from something you genuinely wanted, and how many came from a quiet calculation of what would look right, sound right, be accepted? Most people have never separated the two. They've never had to. This isn't a story about rebellion. It's not about burning down your career or disappearing into the woods. It's slower and stranger than that. It's about noticing, for the first time, that there might be two versions of you living in the same body, the one performing and the one waiting. If that sounds unsettling, good. Discomfort is often the first sign that something true is trying to surface. Jung believed this feeling wasn't a malfunction. It was an invitation. Not everyone hears it. Fewer still answer it. But if you're still listening at this point, some part of you already has. Why approval feels like oxygen. Before you can understand why other people's opinions carry so much weight, you have to understand where that weight comes from. It isn't a personal flaw. It's inherited machinery. For most of human history, being cast out of the group didn't mean loneliness. It meant death. No shelter, no shared food, no protection from what was out there in the dark. So the brain built a simple, brutal shortcut. Stay likable, stay safe. Read the room before you read yourself. That shortcut still runs today, even though the stakes have changed. A cold reply from a colleague can trigger the same alarm system once reserved for predators. A missed invitation can feel like exile. None of this is weakness. It's ancient software running on modern hardware. Consider Rachel, a nurse in Denver. She's good at her job. Patients trust her. Supervisors rely on her. But she told me once that she can't remember the last decision she made purely for herself. Every shift she picks, every certification she pursues, gets quietly checked against one question. Will this make me look responsible enough? Not happy enough. Responsible enough. That's the trap. It's not that approval feels good. That's normal. It's that approval has quietly become the only currency her nervous system will accept as proof she's allowed to exist. When the praise stops, so does her sense of ground beneath her feet. Understanding this mechanism doesn't switch it off overnight, but it does something important. It turns an invisible force into a visible one, and nothing that's visible can quietly run your life forever. The mask that forgot it was a mask. Jung had a word for the version of ourselves we present to the world, the persona, not a lie. Exactly more like a uniform we put on so early in life that eventually we forget we're still wearing it. At first, the persona is useful. It's how a child learns to behave at school, how an adult learns to function at work. It smooths the friction of living around other people. The trouble starts when the uniform stops coming off, when even alone, in the quiet of your own home, you're still performing for an audience that isn't there. Tom is an architect in Seattle. Ask anyone who knows him professionally, and they'll describe the same man. Calm, competent, always says the measured thing in meetings. Privately, he confessed something that surprised even him. He genuinely didn't know what kind of house he'd design if no client, no critic, no colleague would ever see it. The professional mask had become so complete that his own taste had gone quiet underneath it. That's the quiet cruelty of the persona. It begins as protection, a way to be accepted, to be safe in a group. But left unquestioned, it flips. It stops protecting you from the world and starts protecting the world from whoever you actually are underneath. The ancient Stoic Epictetus, once enslaved, made a similar distinction. There is the role life hands you, and there is the character underneath playing it. Confusing the two is where people quietly lose themselves. The mask was never meant to hold the weight of a whole identity. It was only ever meant to be worn and taken off, the race that was never yours. Once you start noticing the mask, an old habit tends to resurface almost immediately. Comparison. You glance sideways. You measure your pace against everyone else's, their house, their title, their timeline, for what a good life is supposed to look like by a certain age. Jung saw this as more than insecurity. He saw it as a quiet refusal to trust your own direction, a way of saying, your path doesn't count unless it matches someone else's map. Nadia plans weddings in Miami. For years she watched friends settle into what looked like stability marriages, mortgages, 5-year plans, while she kept changing course. Different cities, different partners, different versions of what she wanted from her work. Every reunion left her feeling like she was falling behind in a race nobody had actually asked her to run. Then, during a slow season, she finally sat still long enough to ask herself a harder question. Behind, according to whom? She realized she hadn't been lost at all. She had simply never been running the same race as everyone else. She'd been building something with a different shape, on a different timeline, and no one had told her that was allowed. Comparison spends your energy on speed. What you actually need is direction. Those are not the same resource, and confusing them is how people arrive at 40, having sprinted flawlessly toward a finish line that was never theirs to cross. The shadow you keep meeting in other people. Even after you loosen the mask and step off the wrong race, one thing tends to linger, the sense that people are still quietly judging you. A pause in conversation feels loaded. A short reply feels like disapproval. It rarely adds up, and Jung had an explanation for exactly this. He called it the shadow, not something evil, just the parts of yourself you've decided are unacceptable and pushed out of view. The mind rarely deletes what it rejects. Instead, it projects it outward, onto the nearest convenient face. Ethan teaches high school in Portland. He was convinced his co-workers thought he was underqualified. Every staff meeting felt like an audit. When he finally sat with the discomfort, instead of avoiding it, he found the real sentence underneath. Not, they think I'm not good enough, but I think I'm not good enough, a belief planted long before any of his current colleagues existed. Once he could name it as his own, something odd happened. The staff room didn't change. He did. The imagined courtroom quietly emptied out because he'd stopped supplying the judge. This is uncomfortable to hear because it means the people who seem to be judging you most harshly are often just mirrors, reflecting back a verdict you handed down on yourself a long time ago and never appealed. What silence is actually for? As the noise of performing quiets down, something else tends to surface, and most people run from it immediately. Solitude, not loneliness, not punishment. Jung described it almost as sacred ground, the one place where a voice buried under years of noise finally gets room to speak. Most people avoid this kind of silence instinctively, not because being alone hurts, but because of what it might say once there's no one left to distract from it. Grace is an accountant in Philadelphia. When her position was eliminated without warning, she went from back-to-back meetings to an empty calendar overnight. The first week alone in her apartment felt unbearable. By the third week, something had shifted. In that quiet, underneath the panic, she started hearing something she hadn't heard in years, an honest answer to the question of what she actually wanted, apart from what her job had required her to want. The silence didn't invent that answer. It had been there the entire time, simply outvoted by every meeting, every notification, every obligation competing for the microphone. Jung believed you cannot integrate what you refuse to sit with, and you cannot hear your own voice while you're still performing for an audience, even an imagined one. Time alone isn't running away from life. It's often the only condition under which the truth gets a fair hearing. The quiet return. By now, something has shifted, even if it doesn't look dramatic from the outside. You've noticed the mask. You've stepped out of a race that was never yours. You've stopped handing your own verdicts to other people's faces. And underneath all of it, something Jung called inner discipline has started, quietly, to take root. This isn't the discipline of hustle culture or productivity charts. It's smaller and steadier than that, showing up for what actually matters to you, especially on the days no one is watching and no one would know if you didn't. Daniel runs a small kitchen in Nashville. After years of chasing reviews and recognition, he didn't have a dramatic reinvention. He just started doing one thing consistently, arriving early, prepping with full attention, cooking one dish exactly the way he believed it should taste, whether or not anyone noticed. No announcement, no audience, just the work, done honestly, day after day. Something in him settled, not because the outside world praised him more, it didn't, particularly, but because his actions and his actual values had finally lined up, and that alignment, it turns out, produces a kind of steadiness that applause never could. This is the paradox Jung kept circling back to. The moment you stop needing the world to confirm who you are, the world quietly loses its power to unsettle you. Not because you've gone numb to it, because you've finally stopped asking it a question it was never equipped to answer. That's not the end of the story. For most people, it's the first honest sentence of a story they've been putting off for years, the one where they finally show up as themselves.